On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast, Elon Musk talks up the SpaceX package on the 2020 Tesla Roadster, Tesla breaks ground on Gigafactory 3 in Shanghai, the 75 kilowatt-hour Model S and Model X are going away, and more. What's happening, friends? Welcome to Ride the Lightning, the unofficial Tesla podcast, episode number 180 for January 13th, 2019. I hope your new year is off to a solid start so far. I had my tires rotated today for the first time on my Model 3, and in fact, it's the first time I've had tires rotated on any car ever, maybe that I've owned, because I had my grandfather's Nissan Pathfinder, like 1987, I think that model was, and I had it in 98, something like that. And I just didn't have it long enough, I don't think, to have the tires rotated. Then I got the DeLorean, which has staggered tires. And then I had my Infiniti for 12 and a half years. That had staggered tires, and now here we are. So first time for everything, I guess. And what was cool about that was that I had an appointment made for next week, actually, at the service center. I'd made the appointment a while ago, right on the phone, the first time I made an appointment on my phone. And I got a call from Tesla a couple of days ago that said, hey, we can actually have the mobile service come out and do this at your home or office this week, if you'd like. So I said, sure, because it was no cost, no additional cost. So sure, why not? They're trying to offload some of the work from the service centers, and they've got the mobile crew around able to do that stuff. So I took him up on it, and I want to say thank you to Jason for coming out to my office today at IGN, just around the back by the parking garage entrance. Unfortunately, his Tesla van was just a bit too tall to get into our absurdly low clearance overhead to get into the garage. So he had to park outside, and of course it was drizzling, raining at that point. So I just brought the car out, parked it on the street, went back upstairs. 20 minutes, he was done. Just wonderful service, and it was easy. They just took the credit card, and that was the end of it. So good stuff from Tesla service there. I like that. Elsewhere this week, let's get to some news proper. So the first item up for bids this week is a big change to the Model S and Model X product line. The 75 kilowatt hour battery pack, the standard battery pack on S and X, are going away. In fact, they're going away right now, as of when you are probably listening to this podcast. Elon Musk taking to Twitter to say, quote, starting on Monday, meaning today or tomorrow, or maybe yesterday, depending when you're hearing this, Tesla will no longer be taking orders for the 75 kilowatt hour version of the Model S and X. So this naturally prompted a lot of speculation, a lot of questions. Elon taking a couple of those questions on Twitter. One person wondering, are Model S and X being phased out over the next year or two? Is this is this a first step in that? Elon saying, quote, definitely not. Another Twitter user saying, are you moving away from battery sizing in a similar sense to how Model 3s are sold, i.e. long range, performance, etc.? And Elon replying to that saying, yes. So 100D, 75D, those are going to go away. Of course, all S's and X's are all-wheel drive, so the D is moot. It's redundant. So look for the 100D to presumably become either the standard or the long range, and then you'll have the performance rather than the P100D. So that will be a change coming soon to move it in line with how the Model 3 works. And it does make sense when you think about it. It allows Tesla to tweak battery capacity when they want to without it being a big deal. You know, if they suddenly decide, well, we can do a 110 kilowatt hour pack for the same cost to us, and they can determine what a long-range definition, what a long-range battery pack means versus a number kind of giving a more rigid definition of that term. So the one other thing that made me think of is, well, perhaps my Model S and Model X predictions from the New Year's show might in fact come true this year. You know, if the Model S and X get larger packs that take them up to 400 miles of range, that meaning if the 75 going away means the 100 will become the standard pack, and maybe we'll get a 120 or a 130 that become the long range pack. So we'll see about that. Again, this could simply be nothing more than widening the cost and value gap between the Model 3 and the Model S. That could easily be the case. So we'll keep an eye on it and see what Tesla decides to do in the coming months with S and with X. Next up this week, my prediction from last week that the Gigafactory 3 groundbreaking in Shanghai would probably occur soon turned out to be really soon. It in fact happened this week, early this week, back on Tuesday, with Elon Musk on hand to participate. Elon saying, quote, aiming to finish initial construction this summer, start Model 3 production at the end of the year, and reach high-volume production next year. Shanghai Gigafactory production of Model 3 and Y will serve the Greater China region. Shanghai Giga will produce affordable versions of 3 and Y for Greater China. All Model S and X and higher-cost versions of 3 and Y will still be built in the United States for the worldwide market, including China. And in fact, before I get too deep into this, I've got some more for you. Here is a clip of Elon speaking very briefly at the groundbreaking ceremony in Shanghai.
This will be the most advanced Tesla Gigafactory in the world, and arguably one of the most advanced factories in the world of any kind, perhaps the most advanced. We are just incredibly excited to be here, and would like to just very much thank the mayor and his team for allowing us to make this rapid progress. Thank you very much. And to the Tesla China team, thank you guys. Everyone's been working very hard to get to this day, and we're looking forward to very rapid progress from here on out. It's very impressive what the capabilities of Shanghai in building things. And I learned recently that Shanghai, for example, has the biggest subway system in the world. That's great. And we think with the resources here that we can build the Shanghai Gigafactory in record time. And we're looking forward to hopefully having some initial production of the Model 3, this vehicle, towards the end of this year, and achieving volume production next year. We are looking for the very best talent in China to join Tesla China, and I do want to emphasize there's no limit on the potential. One day somebody could join as a junior engineer here at Tesla Shanghai Giga, and ultimately maybe have my job one day. So we're looking for the very best people to join and help us build a sustainable future for the world. Thank you.
And before I get into some more detail and analysis on this, here is an interview with Elon on Chinese media outlet K News.
Our plan is that this will be the most advanced Tesla Gigafactory in the world, because it will take all of the things that we've learned from our prior Gigafactory production, and we will apply it here. We're going to focus on the affordable versions of the Model 3 and Model Y, which is very important in order to make our cars as accessible as possible to as many people in China as possible. Because our mission is to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport, so in order to do that, we must make our cars affordable. The Shanghai factory will be produce cars for Greater China and probably for many parts of Asia as well. So going beyond China, we'll also export cars from China to other countries in the Asia region. I do definitely want to encourage consumers in China to still order the Model 3 today, because Tesla is actually absorbing the trade tariff costs. And we actually make less money from cars in China than other parts of the world in order to make our cars more affordable to consumers in China. So the high-end versions of the Model 3, the price will still remain the same next year. So I don't want people to hold off on purchasing, expecting a price drop. It's very important because we need to sell cars today in order to build the factory tomorrow. So right now we are selling the more expensive versions of the Model 3. And we will continue to make the expensive versions of the Model 3 in the US, and those will be shipped to China. But it's really in order to maximize the affordability. So the affordable versions of the Model 3 and Model Y will be made at Shanghai Giga, but we will continue to make the expensive versions of the Model 3, the high-end, like the sports version and the very long-range version, that kind of thing. We'll continue to make those in the US, so the pricing will remain the same. And it's very important that people do buy our cars that we're making today, otherwise we will not be able to afford to build the factory.
And now here are some more concrete details from Tesla. They say the Gigafactory 3 will allow Tesla to localize production of Model 3 and future models sold in China, with plans to eventually produce approximately 3,000 Model 3 vehicles per week in the initial phase and ramp up to 500,000 vehicles per year when fully operational, subject to local factors, including regulatory approval and supply chain constraints. Well, to be crystal clear on this, the standard battery 3s and Ys that Gigafactory 3 will be building are going to be in addition to the standard battery 3s and Ys that Fremont will build. I saw a little bit of confusion on that online, so I thought I'd just make it explicitly clear so nobody has any confusion there. Now, as to the production rate, theoretically, they should be able to get to 3,000 cars per week a lot faster than they did in Fremont because, quite simply, they know how to do it now. They've learned so much over the past couple of years, and, there's still, it's not that easy. I mean, they still have an entire new workforce to train, so it will take some time to get to 3,000 cars per week. They're not just going to flip a switch and suddenly be doing 3,000 cars a week, but in my estimation, in my opinion, whereas it took almost a year for Fremont to get to 3,000 cars per week, I suspect Gigafactory 3 may get there in 3 to 4 months if I were a betting man, if I were going to put a guess on it. I'm also curious about the financing for this because, with Gigafactory 1, Tesla got a great deal from the state of Nevada. I mean, if you recall, back when Gigafactory was still existed only on paper, it was a dream at that point. There were a number of states in this country competing for that facility. New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California were really the main contenders there, and obviously Nevada won out. So I would presume that they got a good deal from Shanghai locally and perhaps even China on a national stage. Now, the premier of China did attend and in fact, sort of offered, I won't call it ceremonial, but sort of it meant a lot when he offered citizenship, a green card, to Elon Musk. For them to do that for an American business person, that does speak volumes. So there was that, and then I also did read a report this week that a lot of banks in China they want this deal. They want to be involved in it and be a part of it. They think that it will be a profitable venture. So Tesla does seem to have plenty of suitors in the finance department, and that is certainly a good thing for Tesla. The timeline, by the way, that I just read to you a minute ago, the timeline might sound very, very aggressive, and really it is. But remember that the Gigafactory 1 got up and running very quickly as the entire rest of the facility continued to build out. So it'll be great if Giga 3 can start turning out Chinese region Model 3s by the end of this year. That would be phenomenal. One other quick note, by the way, if you're wondering about why the performance Model 3s won't be built at those local gigafactories, meaning Shanghai and presumably eventually the European Gigafactory 4, I'm wondering about that too. I did ask Elon that very question on Twitter. I unfortunately didn't get a response this time, but I wonder if demand for the performance car and even for the all-wheel drive car, because that seemed to be the insinuation from Elon is that it's really going to be the standard battery car, and whether or not they decide to offer a mid-range in China, but the lower cost versions of the car are going to be what Gigafactory 3 focuses on. I wonder if demand for the performance version is lower in China than it is in the United States, or if it's simply a matter of maximizing what will obviously be, at first, very limited resources, i.e. the production lines. They're not just going to spin up a bunch of production lines at once. So we'll see. There's a lot of interesting stuff left to learn about Gigafactory 3, and this is going to be a very interesting build-out and process to follow as 2019 unfolds. And before I move on to the next story, I want to shout out a quick thank you to Vincent from Irvine for his reporting and coverage on this. The video clip of Elon being interviewed from on Chinese, the news station there, that came from Vincent. So thank you, Vincent. He's got his ear to the ground when it comes to Tesla in China. Next up this week, going from the practical to the absurd, from Chinese-produced affordable Model 3s and Model Ys to the opposite end of the spectrum, the 2020 Tesla Roadster. Elon talking it up this week, meaning it's the first time that we've really heard anything about that car in quite a while. And it started like this. Follow along here, because this is interesting. Someone tweeted Elon saying, "A thought on Tesla innovation. I suggest people drive successive years of the Model S starting from 2012, meaning drive a 2012, drive a 2013, then a 2014, 2015, etc. This car has improved so much, it's unbelievable. Tesla's been iterating on it for over 6 years and isn't stopping now. I can't wait to see the 2022 Model S." So it's just a tweet someone threw out there. They did tag Elon on it. Well, someone that wasn't Elon replied to that with simply 2022 and then a picture. It was an animated GIF of a hovering Back to the Future 2 DeLorean. Elon then, here's where he comes into it. Elon quote tweeted that, the 2022 with the hovering DeLorean, and said, "The new Roadster will actually do something like this." Then people started going crazy, as you might imagine. I wouldn't say I was going crazy, more just kind of chuckling and shaking my head, wondering, what's real and what's not anymore with this project. But Elon did kindly indulge people a bit longer on the topic of that SpaceX package on the Roadster, because that's certainly what he's talking about here. So, everyday astronaut, who is probably the world's biggest SpaceX super fan, obviously a Tesla fan as well, he tweeted Elon saying, "Serious question. I know you're planning on COPVs and such in the back seat area and some cold gas thrusters." That's the SpaceX package. "But why have thrusters on the bottom? Do you want to decrease downforce unless simply to fly?" with a thinking emoji. Elon replied to this with an emoji of his own that was winking and smiling. That set everybody off into speculation land. And Marquez Brownlee jumped into the conversation. Of course, prominent YouTuber, tech YouTuber, who has interviewed Elon before. Marquez says, "The thing is, I feel like you're not joking." And Elon replied to Marquez saying, "I'm not. We'll use SpaceX cold gas thruster system with ultra-high pressure air in a composite overwrapped pressure vessel." That's COPV, by the way. That's from earlier. And I lost my place. "We'll use SpaceX cold gas thruster system with ultra-high pressure air in composite overwrapped pressure vessel in place of the 2 rear seats." So, okay, we've heard him explain that before. He's even mentioned the flying thing that this whole Twitter conversation is predicated upon. He's mentioned that in a very teasery way, but I guess I don't know what this is going to mean in the real world. Is it going to be a hovering Roadster that hovers, I don't know, a foot off the ground? Like as if it were in Back to the Future Part 2, just as a party trick, like it just won't go anywhere, but it'll just hover in one spot. And then maybe when you get out on the track, it will actually, the rockets will assist in your acceleration, your cornering, maybe even your braking as well. So this isn't done. Let's hear some more. Marquez replying back saying, sheesh, I kinda love this. I assume this makes a little extra weight, but I didn't need back seats anyway, and this is going to be unreal to drive in wide open areas. And Elon adding, plus, you can basically accelerate at the limit of human endurance. To which Marquez replied, do all the Founders Editions have this? Ah, Marquez, speaking my language on this. The burning question, will the Founders Edition Roadsters have the SpaceX package built into them? And Elon answering that question saying, it's an option. So no, it will not be built into it. It will be an option from the get-go on the Founders Editions. Another Twitter user asking, how will this be street legal? And Elon saying, I don't think the law fully anticipated this situation, so it probably will be for a while. So that's a very direct and honest and kind of hilarious answer that perhaps regulators will catch wind of this after the car actually becomes real and outlawed. I don't know. I mean, it's a dangerous thing to play with. I mean, you're talking about an absurd amount of power and speed here. But I don't know. I don't quite. That's the thing. It's so out there and so nuts. I don't quite know what to make of this. There was a little bit more. Another Twitter user asking Elon, will the quarter mile be done in less than 8 seconds with the SpaceX package? And Elon saying, no problem, vertically or horizontally. So, okay, there he's joking on obviously the car will not fly a quarter mile into the air in at all, let alone in less than 8 seconds. But on the ground, horizontally, yes, I do believe that in a safe, private track, not on public roads area, that SpaceX package could get you a quarter mile in under 8 seconds. My goodness. So all that is to say, more speculation begins. What on earth will the SpaceX package cost as an option on the Roadster? So you're welcome to send me your guesses. I am setting the over-under at $50,000. We are talking about aerospace-grade rockets, tiny ones, but nevertheless, with a whole cold air, cold gas thruster system. I mean, this is as absurd as it gets. So I can't imagine this is less than $50,000. Quite possibly much more. But yeah, I think that's a good spot for the over/under. I don't know if you think you're taking the over, you're taking the under, but it is the absolute last thing that anyone ever needs. But hey, I'll tell you this: as someone who owned a real DeLorean that could never hover in real life, only in the movies, I want this. I mean, who wouldn't? It's insane that's even this is even a real thing that could possibly happen, but wow. So this was the thing that made me the happiest of all the interesting Tesla news this week, because as I said at the top of this segment, Elon hadn't talked about the Roadster in quite a while. Things had gone rather quiet on the Roadster, so it was nice to hear him talk up the SpaceX package a bit. Next up this week, the last big story of the week is this. Tesla has released Autopilot accident data for Q4. They say in the fourth quarter, we registered one accident for every 2.91 million miles driven in which drivers had Autopilot engaged. For those driving without Autopilot, we registered one accident for every 1.58 million miles driven. By comparison, the NHTSA's most recent data shows that in the United States, there's an automobile crash every 436,000 miles. Well, that in and of itself makes Tesla's safety numbers look very good. But what I think is more interesting here is comparing it to the Q3 numbers, which were this: 1 in every 3.34 million miles driven with Autopilot on is an accident, and 1 in every 1.92 million with it off. So those are slightly worse numbers in Q4 than in Q3. What do I attribute that to? Well, you've got holiday travel in there. So more usage going on, more cars on the road, more cars that might hit you. Plus, you've got to figure too, from Q3 to Q4, the weather turns from summer into fall/winter, which makes for lousier road conditions, which makes things a bit more dangerous. So that's where I presume the quarter-over-quarter difference comes from. And as such, I think it's really going to be interesting now that Tesla is releasing these figures on a quarterly basis to track these year over year rather than quarter to quarter. So that way we'll be able to get, next year, actually rather later this year, we'll be able to get apples to apples comparisons, Q3 2018 to Q3 2019, Q4 to Q4, etc. One other thing. So Elon tweeted this out, and meaning the Autopilot thing, and I happened to catch right when he did. So I took the opportunity to try and sneak in a question on a related subject. So I asked him if he had any update on Summon Plus, which, as you recall, Elon mentioned not too long ago as coming in about 6 weeks, but more importantly, this was going to be the next level of summon that allowed you to have your car follow you around a parking lot like a car dog. A dog car. Car dog, dog car, whichever way you want to go on that. Well, this time Elon was kind enough to reply to me, and he said that it's going through final validation and regulatory approval. It will probably release to the early access program owners in a few weeks, and he noted with an exclamation point, "It's trippy." So I can't wait to see this. When he says early access people in a few weeks, here we stand in, just about the middle of January. So maybe we'll get our hands on this by end of February. If I had to, I don't even want to say conservatively guess, but if I had to Elon time guess it, that would be what I would put my money down on. So Summon Plus is moving along. They have to get some regulatory approval, which, what that tells me is hopefully that means the feature is really cool. If they have to get governments to sign off on it, hopefully that means it's super awesome. Can't wait to try that out. That should be fun. That's it for the Tesla news this week. The big stuff, the stuff I want to utilize here. Your time is valuable. Those are the big stories of the week. Hang with me, though. I'm coming back. I've got 10 Ride the Lightning hotline calls queued up and ready to go, covering all kinds of different topics that you guys called in about. We'll take care of that right after this. Well, podcasts obviously aren't live, so I can't have live callers, but here in the Ride the Lightning hotline, I do the best I can by playing your recorded messages presented as phone calls. It's theater of the mind. It's radio, right? So bear with me. But now I love this part of the show. You guys know that. Your questions, your comments, your discussion topics. This is the time where we talk about them, and we all learn a lot from each other. That's what I love about this segment. So if you've got a question, comment, or discussion topic for the podcast, I welcome you to call in. There are 2 easy ways to do that. In either case, please try to keep your call to a minute and a half tops. That would be super appreciated. And so the first method is you can use your smartphone's built-in voice recorder and then email that file to me at teslapodcast@gmail.com. And the second method which you can participate here is by calling the Ride the Lightning hotline. It's a toll-free number. You just leave a message anytime, day or night. The number is 1-888-989-8752. That's 1-888-989-TSLA. And if you know someone special with an upcoming birthday, anniversary, graduation, or some other special occasion, you can give them a unique gift of friends. Nope, that's not how that goes. A unique gift of recorded voices. You'd think I'd have this memorized by now. From friends and family telling them why they're special. You can podcast those recordings like I do or put them onto a keepsake. Visit lifeonrecord.com if you'd like to learn more. By the way, a quick reminder as well, January's Patreon exclusive bonus episode arrived last week. If you are supporting me at that tier or higher, you get access to that extra bonus episode every month, which is where all the extra Ride the Lightning hotline calls that I can't get to on the weekly show, that's where they go, and we talk through those and have a good time. So the topics on that episode for January include battery technology, demonstrating your Tesla to people who've never been in a Tesla before, buying enhanced autopilot after delivery, supercharging issues, Spotify in Teslas versus Slacker, tire pressure, autonomous charging, the Model 3 web browser, regenerative braking, S versus 3, all kinds of stuff. And callers featured on that January Patreon exclusive bonus episode. We've got Ron from Nashville in there, Matt from Weeki Wachi, Todd from Bedford, Stan from Montana, Nick from Boston, Joe from New York, Jay, Mike from Richmond, Bob from Austin, and Sebastian from the UK. So if you happen to support me at that level on Patreon, do go take a listen to that episode at your convenience. For now, though, let's start with the hottest subject of the week. A ton of people called in response to Simon from Sheffield about lulling a newborn to sleep in a Tesla, in an electric vehicle, by not having that subtle rumble of that internal combustion engine to help lull that baby to sleep. Well, I got a number of calls. I'm just going to play one of them, and then I'll shout everybody else out. I had a little trouble. I listened to this with headphones several times. I don't know if I quite got the name right. Apologies if I didn't, but I believe it's Priyan calls in from New Jersey, replying to Simon from Sheffield about the newborn in a Tesla issue. So, Priyan, you are on the air.
Hey, Ryan. This is Priyan Sarathi from Mount Laurel, New Jersey. I just wanted to start off with a Happy New Year and congratulations on winning the 2 Roadsters. I've been following your story for a long time, and again, I get all my news online, but again, it's always great to hear your perspective on the news and your take on things, so I really appreciate everything you do for the community. And the reason I was calling was about the comment from Simon from Sheffield about how his newborn would react in Model 3. I don't have experience with a newborn, but we did do a recent road trip to Destin, Florida, which was about 2,600 miles round trip. And my kids, who are 3 and 5, were actually amazing during the trip. They slept long hours. They even slept through supercharging sessions, and it was actually a great trip. And we never waited for the car. It was always the car that was waiting for us throughout the trip. Granted, we were fortunate that the place we stayed at had destination charging, so that helped us get a head start on the way back as well. However, the one thing I did notice that usually the reason why my kids wake up on an ICE car is I'm driving down and I'm hitting a sudden brake because somebody's slowing down in front of me, and I'm just tailgating them and then braking too late, and that startles them and wakes them up. With the Model 3, especially with Autopilot, it's way more conservative in driving than I am, and I let it do its thing since we were doing a long road trip. And that definitely helped them stay soothingly asleep much longer than they normally would. And I got to the point where I was starting to doze off if I had finished listening to your podcast. I did get a chance to catch up on some of the old ones I didn't listen to. But if I wasn't listening to anything, it was so soothing and that even I was falling asleep. So, Simon, don't worry. Your daughter or son, I'm not sure, but your newborn is going to do just fine in your Model 3 on your long road trips. Don't worry about that. Again, thanks for everything you do, Ryan, and we'll touch base soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you so much. That is exactly the real-world feedback that I was hoping to get for Simon, and for a number of other. I'm sure plenty of people in the audience are either in this position now, or are planning to be, or will be in the coming years. So, thank you so much for that call. And by the way, the same sentiment. Everybody said that exact sentiment. Nobody saying, "Oh yeah, no, the electric car was terrible for trying to lull the baby to sleep." So DJ in LA called in with similar words. Sean from Denver called in. Brian from Northeast Pennsylvania. Tom from Chicago. Lawton from Chicago. Everybody saying that their Tesla does a great job of helping lull their newborn to sleep. So thanks to all of you who called in about that. I really, really appreciate it. Michael from Pleasanton calls in next. He's my road trip buddy, if you remember, on the way down from San Francisco to Phoenix. And he's calling in on his way back about another good road trip item if you happen to be caravanning with another Tesla, one or more other Teslas. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ryan. Michael from Pleasanton here with
Sunny.
Hey, we're on our way back from our road trip to Phoenix with you, which I want to say was a blast doing with you. And after listening to the podcast last week, I realized there was one thing you didn't mention, which I think was pretty cool that we did, which was to have walkie-talkies. So if anybody is doing a road trip, I highly recommend finding some walkie-talkies, because we're missing our walkie-talkie buddy right now, talking about strategy and everything from, hey, I'm going to pass this guy, to when do we stop and get some food. That was pretty cool. So the other thing I wanted to mention is we stopped in Palm Springs on the way back here, and we talked to my cousin who has a Model S, and he said that they are going to be putting a new supercharger in downtown Palm Springs, starting with 11, but they have permits for up to 25 based on demand. So while you've got one in Indio and you've got one in Cabazon, there will soon be one in the last thing is, I just wanted to mention that I did have a little trip up with my car. I backed over a curb and bent the Scottsdale Supercenter, and the guys were great there. They passed me up. They made an appointment for me at the service center, my home service center in Dublin, for that, and for the light that has the LED strip that you noticed was out. And so they were great, but I didn't get their names, but awesome experience there. So that's it. I'll talk to you later.
Michael, it is great to hear from you. Yes, I totally forgot to mention that you had kindly brought along a walkie-talkie for each of us on the drive, which did indeed prove invaluable during that long trip. So, if you ever get the opportunity to do a Tesla caravan of a good distance, like Michael and I and his daughter Sunny did, take a walkie-talkie if you get a shot. It can be super useful for a number of situations. If you want to adjust speeds, we were saying, all right, why don't we pump it up to 80 here, or let's only do 70. So we were using it for that. It can help with merges. So, you get in a wolf pack of cars on those 2-lane freeways, 2-lane interstates where you're supposed to stay to the right and pass on the left, but, nobody ever does, and then it just clogs everything up for everybody. So, you can get one of you to let the other one in. That we did that a couple times. That's super useful. It's useful for warning of upcoming exits, just to make sure you're both on the same page, etc. In fact, that Michael's call reminded me about the one time on the trip where our respective nav systems somehow managed to give us 2 different routes to the same destination, despite the fact that we were in the same place at the same time. And one of us, the person in front, which I think was Michael, ended up needing to exit pretty quickly because I was like, no, go here. And the radios really help with that. Without that, we would just not have been able to react in the moment like that. So, Michael, I hope you made it home safely. And yes, let's do it again next year. That was fun. It was great to be able to stare at another Tesla the entire time. Also, this reminded me of one other quick thing that I didn't talk about on my return trip, which I made by myself, but, me and Daisy. But I tell you, I must have seen this, no joke, no exaggeration. I saw easily a dozen car carriers loaded with Teslas, mostly Model 3s, a dozen Tesla loaded car carriers heading, first when I was on Interstate 10, heading west towards Los Angeles, they were heading east. And then when I got on the 5 heading north to San Francisco, they were coming south. So just a heck of a steady stream of just shipments and shipments of new Teslas coming out of the factory. Business doesn't stop just because the quarter ended and the tax credit got cut in half in the United States. Those cars kept right on pumping out of that factory. It was just cool to see. Like the first one, I was like, "Oh, that's neat." And then by the end of the trip, I'd literally lost count of how many trucks full of Teslas I saw going in the opposite direction. Our next call comes from Ken in Dallas. So there's this topic recently on the podcast about superchargers not billing people. Certain superchargers basically giving you a free supercharge. So here's an interesting call from Ken in Dallas.
Hey Ryan, this is Ken in Dallas. I was calling in response to the question about certain superchargers that aren't billing the owners after they stop there. I'm not sure if this applies to the superchargers in question, but here in Texas, some of the major superchargers on the interstates between the big cities are hosted by a local bakery chain. I was told that this company pays the supercharging fees as an incentive for people to stop there. So I've gone on 3 road trips now, 2 to Houston and 1 to Austin, and never been charged for my supercharging. And the bakery also gives free specialty coffee or tea to anyone that shows their Tesla key at the counter. So thought I'd pass that on. Maybe the same kind of setup is occurring in other locations. Thanks.
Thank you for your call, Ken. So, as some of you may know, I am a reporter by day in the world of video games, so I decided to look into this to see once and for all what the deal actually was here, because it would be pretty darn awesome if that was true. So, it's the business that Ken was referring to. I touched base with Ken after he called in. It's Collins Street Bakery. And here's what they had to say. So they said, Tesla originally contacted us wanting to set up a supercharging station at our location in Waco on I-35 near Baylor University. Their offer was to pay for everything in order to get 10 parking spaces from us. They paid for the construction, the wiring, and the ongoing electricity related to the chargers. They felt that if they took spaces away from our customers' available parking, they owed us that. They did the same when they requested to build on our I-45 bake shop parking lot in Corsicana, Texas. However, when they approached us recently regarding our bake shop near Tyler on I-20 more recently, they modified their proposal. Bearing all costs as they had in the previous 2 arrangements was becoming a burden on their efforts to become profitable as a company. They therefore proposed to pay for all construction and electrical wiring costs as in the past, but asked if we would carry a share of the burden of the cost to charge, arguing that the 30 minutes or so required to fully charge almost guaranteed us a Tesla customer would be shopping our store as they waited. This request was specific to our I-20 location only and was not made retroactive to our first 2 agreements. We felt their offer was a fair one and accepted. So to answer your question, it is Tesla that is determined to give away these free charges to their customer base. And since Tesla is such a great partner of sorts, and Tesla drivers are such nice people, we gladly pour up good hot coffee or ice-cold tea as a freebie in honor of this mutually beneficial relationship. So that is just really super cool to see. Just 2 businesses that are treating each other and treating their customers in the right way. I wish that were the rule rather than it feels like the exception these days. I'm sure it's really not, but it's just great to see that. So good stuff from Collins Street Bakery, good stuff from Tesla. So if you're on your way through Texas, and you happen to stop at one of the aforementioned charging stations, maybe go inside. It looks like, you get a free coffee or a tea. Maybe grab a pastry or something to show your appreciation for the kindness and love being shown towards Tesla owners from the Collins Street Bakery folks. Nathan from Tucson is up next. He has a little quick tip, kind of a hack, not even a hack, just a little thing that you can do on your Model 3 to help in certain charging situations. This will make sense right now.
Hey Ryan, this is Nathan from Tucson. When charging, sometimes I walk out to my Model 3 and the charge port won't open. So I can either open the app or I can open a door and unlock and wake the car up, and the charge port will open with a button on the charger. But I have found a fix that at least is kind of a workaround. If you open or at least push on the left rear handle enough, you don't even have to fully open the door. Just push on it enough, you'll hear the car wake up, and it'll allow you to open the charge port door. So hopefully that'll be something that somebody can use. First time calling in. Thank you for the podcast. As always, just like everyone else, keep it up. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Nathan. I have also used the push the door handle in just enough to wake the car, but not enough to unlatch the door trick. But I actually have used it for a different purpose. For me, I don't like that the charging cable won't unlock from the charge port when you press the button on the cable if the car is locked down. And even when your phone, i.e. your key, is in your pocket, it still locks down. I get locking the cable, for sure. You don't want some rando unplugging you somewhere. But if the car senses the key right there, it sure would be nice of it to release that charging cable when you press the button, even if the car is locked. So I would hope that maybe this could be addressed with some sort of over-the-air update. So fingers crossed that it's managed to annoy a programmer or engineer on the software team, in addition to annoying me, and thus will make it onto the software feature roadmap for the near future. Fellow Ryans unite. Ryan in Chicago is up next. He wanted to add his own experience about a stuck supercharging cable while we're on that similar topic. Ryan, go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, it's Ryan in Chicago. I wanted to call and offer some additional clarity on your problem unplugging and getting the red Tesla logo. It's actually happened to me a couple of times, and it's been at the same local urban supercharger. So when this happened, I also got a few notifications on the screen stating that charging was disabled, never used the charge port lever to insert the cable, a few weird things. And what I found is that actually when you're unplugging at that local supercharger, you need to hold the button down and then unplug once the logo goes white. I have a habit at home of just pressing the button once. The cable will unlock itself and then pull it out. But at that supercharger in particular, you need to hold it down. Now, I can't remember if I need to do that at other superchargers, if it's just a habit, or maybe it's just an error of this one supercharger in particular. It's the one by O'Hare. But hopefully that the software update that you mentioned will fix that in the future. But the good news is that all my error messages, once I have had this red logo, they've gone away on their own once I've plugged in at home for a few minutes. And I haven't had any charging issues since. So thanks so much. Enjoy the podcast. Can't wait to hear more from you.
Thank you, Ryan. We not only had the same name, but we had the same experience, and it was even at an urban supercharger for me as well. But until that software fix comes to change that charging cable unlocking behavior, I agree with you. It would be a very good idea to try and get in the habit of holding that release button down so that you don't have to then reach into your trunk for that manual release cable. Thanks for the call. Robert from the Bay Area is up next. He's got a tip and a question. Robert, take it away.
Hello, Ryan. This is Robert from the Bay Area. Just one helpful tip and then a question. First on the tip, I noticed myself that it's very hard to get the Tesla software updates if you're not on Wi-Fi, and I don't have Wi-Fi at one house. So the tip is you can actually use the hotspot on your phone. The only issue is you have to leave your phone in the car for, about an hour or hour and a half, maybe while you're inside visiting with someone or whatever. And then typically the software update will come if there is one being pushed, or you're behind on your software updates. So just a tip there. And a question for you. I've got one of my Teslas has a hardware 1, and I've noticed that two things. One is drive by navigation is not on there. And two, during rain and darkness, it doesn't seem to go on autopilot as much as my hardware 2 Tesla. So I was wondering if you thought that that's kind of the end of the autopilot enhancements for hardware 1 is kind of where it is before drive-by navigation, and maybe there might be a few other little things, but that's pretty much it. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you, Robert. Boy, that Wi-Fi hotspot thing is a pretty good Tesla life hack. Thanks for sharing that. As to hardware 1, I think I've given my take on this recently, but just in case I haven't, because quite frankly, all the shows tend to blend together for me, because it's one after another. Like it never, like I work on it almost literally every day. Usually Saturday is about the only day I ever get to take off entirely from the podcast, because calls are coming in, news is happening, and I try to work, a little bit on it every day so that it doesn't just pile up into some like ridiculous, 8-hour marathon the night before I got to do it. But anyway, I do think that yes, hardware 1 is effectively done. If not altogether, at least in the new features department. Navigate on Autopilot needs those additional cameras, which is definitely why hardware 1 doesn't support that feature. So hardware 1 is still a wonderful hardware suite, though, that does plenty of cool Autopilot stuff. So if that's what you've got, you've still got a really awesome driver assistance tool there. Let's see, Josh from Virginia is up next with a quick note about the tax credit bill that was on the table that I've mentioned a few times to extend the tax credit up through 2022. Josh, go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, just calling about a couple of things. One, this is Josh from Virginia, by the way. You mentioned that there was a bill to extend the tax credit. That bill is dead now. Those bills die every when the new Congress is signed in. So one of the Congress members would have to resubmit that bill for this Congress. And the second thing I had for you was someone asked about an extension for the charger cable. You could make one too. You can buy the adapters at Home Depot, and you just get a cord, a wire that's rated for however many amps you're looking to run through it, and you can connect those up yourself. That's all I got. Thanks. Love your show.
Thank you, Josh. Bummer on the EV tax credit bill. I mean, I suppose no news was bad news on that anyway, but perhaps now with party control being split in the House and Senate, that maybe the House can get something not only proposed but also passed, and then hopefully get enough senators on board to actually get it made into law. It'd be interesting to see if we get any developments on the electric vehicle tax credit front in the I guess let's just call it this year. Tommy from Norway is up next and wants to talk about the Model 3's viability due to its suspension. I'll let him explain. Tommy, go ahead.
Hello, Ryan. This is Tommy from Norway calling. I am the bus driver with a Tesla Model S, a red one, that actually runs some of your shows over the speakers for the passengers to listen to. That's fun. I have a question for you. In Norway now, we have the Model 3 that's coming out now, and it will be available in long range and performance only. And I have a friend who really wants one of these, but needs to choose between the long range or the performance version. And the question is, we see that the performance version is almost with its track mode like a race car racing around Laguna Seca, and you know, it's really a performance version. So question is, how harsh is the suspension? Is it possible to use this car as a daily driver with a family and children and all this, or is it too hard to drive? I know you live in San Francisco, and I've driven there, and I know you have some roads there that have bumps and all this. So how do you experience the suspension of your Tesla Model 3 Performance for family use? Is it too tough or hard? Thank you.
Tommy, thank you for the call, and hey, thank you for help spreading the Ride the Lightning love on the bus. I appreciate that. As to your question, I think it's fair to say that how a suspension feels is a fairly subjective thing, but what I can tell you is that it rides very nicely to me, and don't take my word for it, my wife has never complained about it, number 2. And number 3, when I was in Arizona over this past New Year's holiday visiting a lot of family, I took a lot of those family members out in it who had never been in a Model 3 before, and my mother specifically commented on how smooth the ride was. So, if my mom, who would probably not volunteer that unless she thought it actually was fairly smooth, if she's volunteering that, that's probably a good sign. So your opinion may differ, but in my experience, the Performance Model 3 is a pretty family-friendly ride. Cheers to you, Tommy. 2 more calls this week. Dave from Florida is up next responding to my complaint about the clunking sounds from underneath the car on the road trip. And I know we sort of got a little more detail on that last week from a caller, but here's Dave with even a bit more.
Hey Ryan, it's Dave from Florida, and I have some interesting information about that thud noise or pop noise you heard from your car in the colder climate. Well, I do believe it is the thermal expansion of the top of the battery pack, the sheet metal expanding and popping, kind of like a cookie sheet in an oven. What's interesting is this does not happen on the earlier Model 3s. This only happens on cars delivered after, say, mid-May of 2018 or so. And if you go in the back seat of your car and tap on the floor, just pound on the floor, you'll notice it has a very hollow ring, like there's just air in there. So I think both of these issues are due to the removal of the fiberglass mat. You remember the famous Flufferbot story that Elon talked about in May, where they removed this because the robot was having so much trouble, and they determined it didn't help with road noise. But I think it did create these 2 unintended consequences, these 2 other issues. And the reason I'm so confident is I have 2 Model 3s. One was delivered in February, one was delivered in November. The one in February has neither of these issues. You pound on that back floor and it's nice and solid. Also, my friend dug up a patent from Tesla showing that the purpose of that mat was not just to reduce road noise, but also to add more stability to the floor and create compression between the battery and the floor. So I really do believe that this removal is causing these 2 issues. I have Tesla looking into this for me. They've opened a case with engineering. Hopefully they come out with a service bulletin and they can address this for us by adding back that fiberglass mat or some other solution to help resolve these 2 issues. Anyway, thank you. Love the show and keep up the great work.
That's very interesting, Dave. Thank you. I have now started hearing it more at home, just around San Francisco, despite, again, living in a very temperate place, though. I wonder if it's because we are at our chilliest point of the year, so there probably is more of that thermal expansion going on now than at any other point in the year. Certainly compared to the last 5 months that I've owned the car, when it's been mostly, weather in the 60s. But anyway, I'll be curious to hear what you learned from Tess on this. Please feel free to give me a call once again, or email me with whatever Tesla tells you. I mean, I can live with it. It's hardly the end of the world, but I'll be honest, I don't like it. It's not great. I would rather it not be there. If it could be addressed in some way, shape, or form, I would love it to be addressed. I wonder if it's something that could be retrofitted to existing cars, or if it would have to be a change in the manufacturing process, which would mean no retrofit. So I guess I'll wait and see what I hear from you via Tesla on that one. And taking us home this week is Anthony from nearby Brisbane, California, who I mentioned I ran into him at Kettleman City, but he's got another question in addition to him saying hello. So Anthony, go ahead.
Hi, Ryan. This is Anthony from Brisbane. Happy New Year. And first off, I wanted to say it was an awesome surprise bumping into you at the Kettleman City Supercharger. It's a really nice location, right? As soon as I pulled in, I noticed Daisy the Boxer right there, and then glanced at the red Model 3 we parked next to, and I knew immediately from the license plate that I was in the presence of the spirit of adventure. So very cool. The car looks great, by the way. So today I was calling in. I had some questions about the enhanced autopilot versus full self-driving. So I'm interested in where people think Tesla will draw the line between enhanced autopilot and full self-driving, between those two packages in terms of features and capabilities. In recent tweets, I know Elon Musk has talked about upcoming features like traffic light and stop sign recognition, roundabouts, going from home to parking at work with no driver input, and the ability to control your car like an RC car from the app, and all of that seemingly in the context of enhanced autopilot. And that sounds like a lot of really awesome features, and believe me, I will happily take them if they are offered. But I'm wondering, what exactly that's going to leave for the full self-driving package. And do people imagine it might be the kind of thing where EAP remains ostensibly for highway use and only full self-driving gets you that last mile on city streets? Or, maybe is it differentiation, between just that they have a, similar core feature set, but EAP, requires someone to be actually in the driver's seat, while full self-driving, allows the car to operate regardless of the presence or absence of butts and seats, that kind of thing. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot about that kind of stuff recently. I realize this probably sets things up for, wild, baseless speculation of all sorts. But anyway, none of us, I realize, have, an inside track. But, I thought I'd throw it out there and see, if anybody else has more information or thoughts about it. Take care. As always, love the podcast, and hope you're doing well.
Anthony, it was great meeting you, too. Although, on this, I have to say, I respectfully disagree with you. And here's what I'm thinking. I don't think that all of that stuff that you mentioned is part of enhanced autopilot. Some of it is for sure, but I go back to when enhanced autopilot and full self-driving were first on the Tesla Design Studio on the website. Now, I don't have the exact copy handy because it's long gone off the website, but I distinctly recall that it basically split the two of them into two buckets. Enhanced autopilot is all the highway stuff. Full self-driving is for all the around town city stuff, the off the freeway, off the highway driving, including reading traffic lights, stop signs, making turns at intersections, etc. So, in short, forgive me if I already said this recently, but I think enhanced autopilot is basically feature complete now, outside of that Summon Plus that does seem to me to be indicated as part of enhanced autopilot, which is only enhanced by the fact that when Elon replied to my tweet about that, he said, "Hey, it's in final validation now." So that is going to go out to EAP stuff and not, and he didn't say anything about full self-driving on that. So I'm happy to be wrong on that if that's how it ends up playing out, but that's where I think the line is being drawn on that. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, everybody who called in this week. Again, I invite you to call in questions, comments, discussion topics, what have you here in the world of Tesla. Give me a call. Either use your smartphone's built-in voice recorder and record something and then email that file to me at teslapodcast@gmail.com, or call in and leave a message anytime, day or night, on the Ride the Lightning hotline. It's a toll-free number, and it's 1-888-989-8752. Be right back with a few final thoughts and then I'll wrap things up right after this. Alrighty, all I can really tell you about the Spirit of Adventure this week, besides the excellent mobile service experience that I had today, is to tell you about the windshield situation. Now, I don't know if this is a universal Tesla policy across the board, or if it's just a Bay Area thing, but I am told, not only by Tesla service when I called in, but also by my boss's boss, Per Schneider. He's got a Model S. So around here, the Bay Area, just car break-ins it's an almost literal epidemic, because long story short, there's effectively minimal risk for someone to shatter the glass on your car and take anything that's in there. So with Teslas specifically, people, ne'er-do-wells, have been breaking the rear, or the back quarter piece of glass, the one that's next to the passenger doors. That because on a Tesla, the seat back release to lower the back seats down and thus see into the trunk are right there, which I would love to see Tesla change that design in production immediately, because that is an invitation for someone to get in there. I will say, on my old Infiniti, the seat back release was actually in the trunk. You had to do it through the trunk to put those seats back. And kind of looking at it now with this whole car break-in epidemic, that's a safer way to go, because there's just no other way. They'd have to break into the trunk to get to the trunk anyway. So Per's quarter window got broken, and they told him, Tesla service told him, hey, we don't do glass anymore, because there was a whole thing about sort of a safety issue and shards of glass around, and I get that, and I think probably also in part it might just be a volume thing, that there's just so much of it here that Tesla couldn't keep up themselves, so they're just sending you to glass specialists. Well, when I tried to get my windshield replaced, I was told the same exact thing. We don't do it. Safety, even windshields, you got to go to a glass place. So anyway, my insurance company was super cool about it. They had me on three-way calls, first with the insurance claim people, and then with the actual glass, the glass folks. So the only downside is the guy from the glass place says, oh, well, with Tesla, it's a special order. It's going to take a couple weeks to get the windshield, then we'll call you and get it set up. So thankfully, it's not a super urgent thing for me, but I do wonder if that glass policy is just a Bay Area thing due to our rampant broken glass epidemic, or if it is a Tesla policy everywhere. But in any case, my tire rotation's done. Yay, check that off the list. It was easy peasy. And then now the windshield will set me back $500 on my deductible, but oh well, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't. This is not a fixable chip. That's not it's a big bad chunk out of the glass that's now got cracks, a couple little cracks in it that will spread in time. So what can you do? Again, better the glass than the paint. The pro tip of the week this week comes from Cody, who's got a 2013 classic pre-Autopilot Model S. I will throw to him for the tip of the week. Cody, go ahead.
Hi, Ryan. Cody here. 2013 Model S, no Autopilot, and loving it. Just wanted to give a tip to maybe you and others for long-distance road trips and supercharging. I found on the couple of trips that I've taken that if I input the supercharger as my destination, that will not only give me kind of an ETA, but it'll also let me juice up should where I'm going not have a very accessible charge or plug-in. So if I was going from my house to, say, Dallas, I would choose the Arlington supercharger, and then I know what time I'd get into town, and then I would make everything work so that I can drive around town when I get there and have a full tank, so to speak. Love the podcast. Love learning and listening from everyone who calls in and from what you can share with our community. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Cody. Your point about arriving with a full charge is duly noted. But of course, you don't always need to do that. You know, in many cases on a trip, it's no problem to arrive while running on fumes, or I guess sparks would be the more appropriate term, because you're just going to settle in and do a destination charge anyway. Like when I get to my parents' house in Arizona, I had less than half of the battery, and if I had been smart and realized and actually gotten the NEMA 1030 outlet that I was adapter plug that I was supposed to get if I'd been smart about it, then I would have plugged right into that dryer, and when I woke up, I would have had a full battery. Of course, as you know from the last couple weeks of shows, it didn't quite work out that way for me, but I got through it, and now I'm all set for future situations like that. But thank you for the call, and thank you for the tip. If you've got a cool pro tip of some kind, whether it's something with the UI or just some little shortcut or neat undocumented thing you've learned about the car, I'd love to hear from you about it so that I can pass it along to the audience. You know, this is actually probably a perfect opportunity here at the end of the show to note that I owe you an apology. I owe everyone an apology. If I do not sound like myself, if I am ramblier or stumblier or just generally less coherent, and basically if this week's show stinks, I apologize. I had a really bad night's sleep last night. I couldn't get to sleep till about 4 a.m. I got 2, maybe 3 hours of sleep. It was just one of those nights. I had my just anxiety-riddled night where I couldn't turn my brain off, could not get to sleep. So it's been a little bit of a drag today. I'd really rather it not be on Thursday nights if this ever happens again, because I got to do this podcast. I need my brain fully aware and alert and with sufficient levels of oxygen in order to get this thing done. So, especially if you're a new listener, if this is your first show, you're probably thinking, "Man, I'm not sticking with this. This guy's terrible." I can't blame you if you bail out after one episode, but if you see it in your heart, maybe give me one more episode before you pull the plug on me if you're a new listener. And if you've been with me for a little while, you know I'm normally a little more put together than this. But anyway, my apologies. I'm not quite on top of my game today. All right, let me give you just some plugs real quick. So we've got Abstract Ocean, of course, one of the finest and most comprehensive resellers of fine aftermarket products for all the Teslas, as well as for you. They've got some like lanyards and other cool stuff that's for you rather than for the cars. But they've mostly got cool stuff for the cars, like the puddle lights that shine, either the Tesla T logo, the S logo, 3 logo, X logo, down underneath your door. It's like super easy installation. So if you're interested in that, I'm seeing more and more Model 3s that are getting the Abstract Ocean, the TESLA Roadster style lettering that they're putting on the back of their Model 3, which I think if you take the T logo off the trunk lid and put on the TESLA, I think it looks really good. Don't put both. I mean, well, to each their own. I'm not going to tell anybody. It's not my place to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do. But for me, I think it looks best with one or the other and not both. But I'm seeing more and more of that around. Abstract Ocean has that, etc., etc. You can browse everything they have at abstractocean.com. And I say all this because Abstract Ocean has, as they have for the last, couple years now, been kind enough to offer listeners of this show a 15% discount off of your first order. So if you've never ordered with Abstract Ocean, you can go to abstractocean.com, shop around, load up your cart, and then get that 15% off by putting in the coupon code RTL Podcast at checkout. And that's RTL Podcast, all one word. What else? Immaculate Reflections. My friend Jeff took great care of my car. If you are taking delivery or just, whether you just want to get your car detailed or protected or both, all kinds of services, whatever works for you and your budget, Jeff can accommodate. So look him up at irdetailing.com. You can also look him up on Yelp and Instagram at immaculate_reflections on those respective URLs. The Patreon, that, as I've mentioned to you, is the primary way through which you can support this podcast and my efforts. If you so choose, it has always and will always be a voluntary thing. You can find more information at patreon.com. That's Patreon. Patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. And then a couple of other little product bits here. The folks at luxendary.com, Luxendary. If you go to luxendary.com/RTL, they've got a bunch of fun Tesla and Elon-verse inspired smartphone cases. So if you'd like one of those, you go over there. Like I said, use the /RTL address on that, and that will automatically bake in a 15% discount off of anything that you buy. And then there's the Jada wireless charging pad, which I sadly don't have any sort of discount code for you on. But if you're buying one, if you're just wanting to get one, if you wouldn't mind using the URL I'm about to give you, because they are offering me a little bit of an affiliate thing on that, where basically if you use this URL, they'll give me a couple bucks in the deal. So that URL is getjada.com/ref/8, and Jada is spelled Jeda. And my referral code, I guess I shouldn't forget, people are still ordering Teslas, so I've been very, very just humbled and flattered and honored to reach the mountaintop as far as the referrals go. So I encourage you to find someone in your life, find a friend, a family member, use their referral code, get them some prizes, and get that 6 months of free unlimited supercharging for yourself. But if I happen to be the only Tesla person in your life right now, you are very much welcome to use my referral code. It's Ryan73014. So if you're ordering online, go to ts.la/Ryan73014. That'll take you to the Tesla Design Studio where you design whichever Tesla you want, order it, and it'll have the code baked in. If you're a European order, the instructions for you just place your order, and then I gave instructions early in episode 175 about there's an email and a process you have to follow to get a referral code applied to your order if you're ordering from Europe. Finally, the Patreon producers, the super kind folks that support me at the producer level each and every month. That means they get their names shouted out at the end of every episode. I want to start with our newest Patreon producer, Josh. Thank you so much for your support, Josh. Also, Tyler Van Gorder, Blake Wiley, Daniel Grummer, Michael Waddle, Stig Mickey Jensen, Luxendary.com, Dory and Steve Guberman, Joel Sapp, Lyle Austin, Bill Royko, Rick Sinta, Brian Hope, Jerry and Mary Smith, Gabriel Salays, Luke Miles, David Nondahl, Eric Randolph, Luke A., Ulrich Lassa, David Vakil, Rome Strack, Harold Plug, Peter Chalet, Lars Hoffman, Lee Sweet, Marcus Mayenshine, Tim Hyde, Emotion Rentals, Jason Chalukas, oh hi Daisy as she shakes off, Robert Miracle, Michael Lester, Matthew Para, Logan Willis, Alexi Heft, Jonathan Wales, David Brander, George Cassiopo, Wolfgang Obergen, Pete White, DJ Harbaugh, and Paul Hussey. Thank you all so much for your ongoing support. You can all subscribe to this podcast, which is not a money thing at all. It's free. That's just meaning subscribe on whatever podcast platform you like so that the show downloads to you automatically every time a new episode drops rather than you having to go find it and download it yourself. You can subscribe on iTunes, on Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn. Remember, TuneIn, that's where you get it in your Tesla. Spotify, YouTube as well, by the way. If you again, just search Ride the Lightning Tesla Podcast on Google and you will find my channel. And then there's the hosting site if you want to pick up the RSS feed or individual show downloads at teslapodcast.libsyn.com. That's it. that's everything. Another busy show, another fun week of Tesla news. 2019's off to a fast start for Tesla, which is good for me because that means I've got no shortage of fun stuff to talk about on every single episode. I love it. I thank you all so much for your time, your attention, your support in whatever way you give it. It all means a lot to me. This podcast is a blast to do. I love this community, and I am having a great time. 2019 is hopefully going to be a great, great Tesla year. Thanks again, everybody. Happy electric motoring, and I'll see you next week.
I mean, I think a Tesla is the most fun thing you could possibly buy ever. That's what it's meant to be.
Well,
our goal is to make it's not exactly a car. It's actually a thing to maximize enjoyment. Make it maximum fun.